Hello everybody, it is time for another book review. This time we will be discussing Seet Bean Paste by Durian Sukegawa. Now, I'm going to be honest, Seet Bean Paste isn't the sort of story I normally go for. I'm usually much more into science fiction and fantasy, which I'm sure you've seen represented among the other videos in my channel. This one, it really just caught my eye because it has... Let me let you take another look at this. It has an absolutely marvelous cover, and it wasn't all that thick. So I figured I would be able to breeze through it fairly quickly, even if it didn't really strike my fancy. It turns out that it really struck my fancy. This was a fantastic novel, and if anything, it proves that I'm probably a little bit too limited in what I actually go out of my way to read, because I'm keeping track of the books I've read for the year. I've got one fiction story, which is this, and one romance, and then 13 science fiction and fantasy stories. But enough about my reading habits. Let's get into the actual review of the book. Seet Bean Paste follows Santaro, an ex-convict working off his debts at a dorayaki shop despite having a distinct dislike of confections. For those of you who don't know, dorayaki is a pancake-type dessert stuffed with sweet bean paste. It is quite good, and the filling is, of course, where the story gets its name. Out of a need for help, he hires an elderly patron, Toku, who quickly shows him that a lot more goes into making confections than just using pre-made ingredients. Genuine care can be put into this, and it produces an incredible result. Toku also makes connections with quite a few of the customers who come by the dorayaki shop, including a young high schooler named Wakana. Of course, things can't go easily for our characters, and as the secrets of Toku's past begin to come out and affect the business of the dorayaki shop, Santaro's owner makes him fire the elderly woman, but the impact she has on the shop and him lingers well after her absence. There is so much I can talk about regarding this story. I think I want to start quite simply with the characters. The story doesn't have very many of them. Quite a few, some of them aren't even named. I can't actually recall the owner of the dorayaki shop being referred to as anything more than Madame or the owner, which I think is a very deliberate choice that works well, and it helps highlight really this trio of Santaro, Toku, and Wakana that the story really cares about and follows. The entire thing is told from Santaro's viewpoint. Wakana is really the smallest side character, but she still has a lot of impact, even though she doesn't necessarily have the most, I guess it's not screen time in a book. The highest page count? It sounds like we're making a body count. We'll go with page count, that works. I think part of what makes her character work so well is there's a great generational divide between these characters. Toku is quite elderly, Santaro is solidly in his middle age, and of course Wakana is still attending high school. This generational divide is central to some of the story's themes of connection and understanding of each other. It's a deeply empathetic story as Santaro begins to become less closed off to others. At the start of the story, he's very standoffish. He just keeps his head down and works in his dorayaki shop to pay off his debts to the boss who bailed him out of jail. And then he basically goes home, drinks himself to sleep, and rolls out of bed the next day. It's sort of implied that he works 7 days a week, some very long days, and at the beginning of the story, He doesn't try to connect with anybody. He doesn't even try to connect with or care about the job. He just uses pre-made, pre-bought ingredients and slaps them together. A lot of what Toku changes when she comes into the story is this apathy that he has about him. She begins to make the sweet bean paste from scratch with him, teaching him how to study and listen to the beans. And we'll talk about listening to beans a little bit more later, but what she really introduces is passion and care. Passion for his craft and care for the customers who come by. This is by no means an overly complex story, at least on a surface level. I think it does have some very complex messages and thematic undertones that it uses a fairly simple plot to really focus on. Not a lot happens narratively, which allows so much to happen emotionally in the story, and I think that's where it really shines, on getting into those emotions and bridging the previously mentioned generational divide. Even after, it's been a little while since I've read this, and even after that time, the story has still stuck with me. Like, it feels like this review shouldn't be coming so naturally to me, given the fact that it's been a little while since I finished this book. But even with so few characters, even within the confines of such a simple plot, it manages to create such a stirring and moving story. I mentioned that Toku talks about talking to beings and hearing the voice inside of things, and I think it's really a great allegory just for listening to not just other people, but yourself and the world around you. I don't want to go into too much detail and spoil the story, but it comes to such a beautiful ending. Something else I would like to discuss is just the prose and the quality of the writing. It is just done so beautifully. The entire story, it really jumps off the page, and with some beautiful prose backing such incredible characters and so many great ideas, I cannot recommend this book enough. Like, this is the point in the video I would usually talk about any cons I have with the story, anything that doesn't sit right with me, but I can't. I just, even in my notes where I have the little pros and cons, the bullet points for things I want to talk about, I've got all of my pros, the generational divides, the simple story, just being a really fucking good book. I wrote lovely fucking story, and under cons, I just put, and an ellipses, because this book might not be to everybody's tastes, but I can't actually think of anything wrong with Sweet Bean Paste, anything that made me raise an eyebrow and be like, really? It's just a lovely story with that is an upside down book. It is a lovely story with a lovely cover, and like, as pretty as this cover is, let me get it a little bit closer, the book still manages to be better. I can't recommend this enough.